Sarah Pochin is the Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsbury. Sarah, good evening. What do you make of this major change in UK government policy?
Good evening, Peter, and thank you for having me on. I think this is quite frightening what's happening. The government is bulldozing through a policy here. This is not a democratic decision. This has not been debated in Parliament. We know, of course, that even with a debate in Parliament, their majority is such that it probably would get voted through. But
do you think Parliament should be recalled, Sarah?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do. This is incredibly serious. The fact is, Peter, that there are still hostages being held by Hamas, being tortured, being raped in all likelihood. We've heard some of the awful stories coming out from those that have been released. They've still got hostages. Just imagine if there were British hostages being held somewhere in the world and the British government wasn't doing all it could to get them back. There would be outrage in this nation. That's what Israel is doing. It still has its people hostage there. The fact is as well that Israel have led the world. They have been brave in facing up to these terrorists that is the Hamas situation, the organisation. Israel is attacked constantly on every border, on every side. And yet, here we are, we've got Egypt, the biggest land border with this area. And yet, what do? Do they take refugees in? No. Do they try and get aid in? No, not as far as I'm aware. And yet, so Israel is absolutely left to its own devices. Thank God the Americans back Israel every step of the way. But we know as well that when aid has been dropped in, it is seized by Hamas. We've heard stories about what Hamas try and do with that aid, whether they try and sell it, they keep it. Hamas are ruling this area. They are ruling the population. And for the UK government to say they are going to recognise the state of Palestine without a democratic debate in Parliament is frightening, it's shocking, and it just shows you how this government does not have democracy at its heart. It is running roughshod over democracy.
Why do you think they're doing it, Sarah? Do you think it's because of genuine concern about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, or do you think it's about perhaps problems closer to home in regard to many Labour MPs and others as well who are pressing Keir Starmer to do this? He is a weak Prime Minister, is he not?
He's a weak Prime Minister. I would be amazed if Keir Starmer lasts 4 years. The fact is that Keir Starmer, in my opinion, and it is my opinion, is doing this because of the Muslim vote that props up the Labour Party. We know that he has trouble in his ranks. He's under pressure from his ranks to declare this state of Palestine. But is that in the right interests of global peace? Is it in the right interests of the British people? And does it reflect the view of the British people? Well, without a debate in Parliament, then how can he be sure of that? He is elected to represent the British people on a global scale. Well, he's an embarrassment. And as for David Lammy and his speech putting a hand of history, God help us, Peter, if that represents a hand of history.
Sarah, there's another big political riot. It involves your party and it involves your party leader, Nigel Farage. I just want to remind our viewers and listeners, or those who might have missed it, about the comments that Technology Secretary Peter Kyle, of the Labour government, of course, made to Sky News this morning.
We have people out there who are extreme pornographers, peddling hate, peddling violence. Nigel Farage is on their side. Make no mistake about it, if people like Jimmy Savile were alive today, he'll be perpetrating his crimes online. And Nigel Farage is saying that he's on their side.
Well, this afternoon, your leader, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, hit back.
Well, this is so absolutely disgusting that it's almost beyond belief. Just how low can a Labour government sink in its desperation? Yes, of course, they're in trouble. They're well behind us in the opinion polls. But frankly, to say that I would do anything that would in any way aid and abet people like Jimmy Savile is frankly it's so below the belt, it's almost not true. But all of this is, of course, deflection. Deflection because we were told from the very start, and by the way, it's not the Labour government that have passed this legislation, it was the previous Conservative government that have passed this legislation, which is why you've barely heard a squeak out of them. But if it's designed to protect children, then I sense it may very, very well have been drawn up by people who don't know what they're doing.
Sarah, I'm going to presume that you agree with every word that Nigel Farage says there. What do you make of what Peter Kyle has said?
I do agree with Nigel's position, and I made that very clear in an interview last night about the online safety bill. It's called an online safety bill. It does nothing to protect our children. What it does do is suppress free speech. With respect to Peter Kyle, he should be absolutely ashamed of his behaviour. But do you know what, Peter? If this was in reverse, if this was something that Reform was saying, then I think that one of us would have been arrested by now, because doesn't this fall into the Labour view now of condemning free speech, of inciting hatred? Making comments like this about somebody as high profile as Nigel Farage is putting his safety at risk, in my opinion. It's potentially, opening the door to all those trolls, all those people that
I think you're right with that, Sarah. I think you're right with that. I also think that what Labour told us was that they were the grown-ups. They weren't just going to throw mud. They were going to say things that were sensible, and they were going to have sensible debates with people. I mean, I wonder, I don't know if you're familiar with Godwin's law, Professor Godwin in the United States. He says once you start comparing people to the Nazis, you've lost the argument. I mean, once you go down the road of comparing people to monsters like Jimmy Savile, I think you've lost the argument.
I really think this is sinking so low because they are desperate. We know as Reform politicians, all of us, that the next 4 years are going to be a bumpy ride. We have to stand firm. We have to hold the line, because what we're saying is right. This Online Safety Act is nothing of the sort. And mark our words, because I tell you what, Peter, I get concerned that you and I, it's online at the moment, but just say that, my team clip these things. Of course, we do as politicians, and we add comments and we post them online. What's going to happen? Am I going to get arrested? Am I going to get thrown into jail? Am I going to be another Lucy Connolly because you and I have even had this conversation? That's where we're going.
I'll bake you a big file into a cake and send it in, Sarah, if you get sent to prison. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Listen, on a more serious note, let's talk about migration, and specifically, actually, before we get to that, let's talk about Rotherham. This breaking story this afternoon about 5 women who were exploited by grooming gangs in Rotherham as children, saying they were also abused by police officers in the town at the time. One says she was raped from the age of 12 by a serving South Yorkshire police officer in a marked police car. He would threaten to hand her back to the gang if she did not comply. This is just shocking, and also not shocking at the same time, because it's just so appalling in regard to Rotherham.
Well, this is obviously allegations. My understanding is at the moment, and there's an investigation underway. But the point is, the investigation is being done by South Yorkshire Police. So South Yorkshire Police are investigating South Yorkshire Police. How does that work? And in fact, Professor Alexis Jay, I think herself, the author of the latest Grooming Gangs report, has herself said how shocked she is about that mere fact. How can that possibly be allowed? And how can the public have any confidence that the results of that investigation are actually going to reflect what really happened? There are allegations now that these girls used to let the police abuse them, rape them in their cars, wherever, because the police would threaten them. If not, they'd be returned to the grooming gangs and they'd be raped by 15 to 20 men at a time. Now, those are allegations, but they are so serious at a time when public trust in the police, I would say, is at an all-time low.
And crime is so high as well, Sarah. We've seen with that stabbing in Southwark in London yesterday, 2 people dying there as well. We just know that crime is out of control in this country.
Crime is out of control. That stabbing was horrendous. I'm surprised there's not been more coverage on the news. It wasn't on the national news last night. So 2 people dead, 1 fighting for their life in hospital, and the actual perpetrator, who has been arrested but is also in hospital. This is happening.
The alleged perpetrator, we should say. Yeah.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. You're absolutely quite right. The alleged perpetrator. This is happening on our streets. It wasn't on the national news last night. It was GB News actually that I think broke the story last night. And Unfortunately, you have to beg the question. They have said, the authorities have said, that the alleged perpetrator is either a foreign national or of mixed race. You have to beg the question whether people are not reporting it now, because are we already being censored on what the national broadcasters are allowed to say?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that is correct, and I remember a few days after that horrendous attack in Liverpool, and of course we'll be careful about that because there are charges outstanding with that. But what happened in Liverpool the day of the celebrations of Liverpool Football Club winning the Premier League, we were told immediately that was a white British man. We were told within an hour that was a white British man.
Two-tier justice, Peter.
Something not entirely dissimilar on a much smaller scale. Something happened in Leicester on the Saturday. I was on air on the Saturday when a car, there was a driver of the car, careered into people in Leicester. Now, we asked Leicestershire Police, they put out the information and said a 31-year-old man has been arrested. And look, it didn't matter to me what ethnicity he was, but they didn't tell us what ethnicity he was. It later transpired he's a Sikh who was born in the UK. Charges in that as well, so we'll be careful. But my question was, surely this has to be a universal policy. Whatever background people are from, whatever ethnicity they have, there has to be a very clear and equal sense of what the police actually tell us, because that's the only way, I think anyway, Sarah, and I'd be interested in your view, that we're going to have any trust in the police, because always we're going to be asking, what are they hiding from us?
The police should be impartial, full stop. You know, who could possibly argue against that? And yet we know at the moment that that's not happening. Now, who are giving the police the orders? You have to ask, where are they coming from? Is it coming from the government? Is it coming from the high command in the police? I don't know the answer to that. But the fact is, at the moment, the police are not impartial, and that is why the British people are losing the confidence in the police. They're losing confidence that this country has law and order under control, because it clearly doesn't. And as you know, Reform have started a campaign over the summer and have called it Britain is Lawless. We've been criticised for that. Some people will claim that crime is on a decrease. Crime is not on a decrease. I saw an interview the other night with Times Radio claiming that crime was on a decrease, and they had some graph, with everything going down. It's absolute nonsense. Crime is not being reported. It's not being reported because people have no confidence that the police will come out. We know that crime look in London, look at the knife crime going on. I mean, you can't go out wearing a fancy watch without risking your life in London at the moment. To name just but one example, people do not feel at all that the police are on their side at the moment. And something like this Rotherham situation is going to do nothing to help that.
Sarah, thank you. That's Sarah Pochin there, who is the Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby.